Ladies and gentlemen of Knucklehead Nation, I am absolutely delighted to be joined by one of my favorite coaches to work with, none other than Coach Rage Ing. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm doing great now. I'm here.
I love it. I love it. Coach Rage, I brought you on today's podcast because I wanted to talk about the most anticipated fights of FightersRep 14, which will be a lot. And the reason I invited you on is not only do you know a lot of the people that compete at FightersRep, but you coach some of the people that compete at FightersRep, and you're coaching a couple guys that will be competing at FightersRep 14. But before I get into that, just briefly, in a nutshell, let people know who haven't seen you before on the channel, who's Coach Raging.
My system is called EYR, EYR, Engage Your Rage. And it is a system of striking that is designed for competition, for boxing, kickboxing, and MMA. My team is called the EYR Division. And right now, we compete frequently in FightersRep kickboxing.
I love it. I love it. And where are you based out of right now, Rage, if you want to add that?
Oh, right now we are based in Los Angeles, and we train frequently in Fontana at the Claycomb Karate Academy.
I love it. I love it. And, for you guys that don't know, because he's a humble guy sometimes, Coach Rage has been in this game for such a long time. He started out in karate way back in the day. He did vale tudo, no holds barred fighting before, MMA was even a thing, full contact fighting. And he brought his talents over to Black House, and now he's earned enough experience and respect to move on and do his own thing. And I am absolutely thrilled to be working with him. One of the best coaches, I must say, that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. For sure. So, Coach Rage, I want to talk about these fights. I want to talk about this card. You mentioned there's a few fights that kind of pop out to you that you're excited about. I'm sure the ones that you're involved with are very exciting to you. So I kind of want to give you the floor for the first couple. I know you're very excited about your own guys, Raymond Martinez and Michael Claycomb. Of course, Raymond Martinez, a staple now at FightersRep, a very exciting fighter. He's going to be taking on Brandon Anderson, a guy who's making his FightersRep debut. We've never worked with him before, but he's out of Coach Mike Sarkeesian's gym. I'm sure he'll be a very good fighter. From what I hear, he's a very exciting fighter, a very good fighter. And then, of course, Michael Claycomb, right, out of Claycomb Karate, who, you're working with now and teaching a deadly combination of rage-style striking with karate, something we're very excited about. But I'll give you the floor real quick. Kind of tell me, what fights you're excited about here.
Well, I'm both Michael and Raymond. So if you think of the yin yang, the Chinese symbol, on one side it's black, on the other side is white, and inside the black is a tiny bit of white, and inside the white is a tiny bit of black. That's Raymond and Michael working together. Raymond has a dark side and presents himself as such, and a nice violent streak, which is why he was attracted to work with me. And Michael is very squeaky clean, all American, and a little light in the dark, a little dark in the light. And having these two work together is really kind of completing everything and pulling out what needs to be pulled out from each other's personalities, their thought process, and their skills and techniques. So it's a pretty cool thing to be a part of.
I think it's amazing. I mean, and the way you describe Raymond and Michael is so spot on. I mean, I think I said this in the Hottest Prospects video where I mentioned the both of them actually. They're my top 5 or 6 hottest prospects coming off of Fighters Rep 13, especially.
Awesome.
And I
Awesome.
don't know if you got to see that. Definitely check that out. I did it with Marco Martinez. And, I mentioned Ray. I mean, you mentioned the darkness. One of the things that sticks out about me is how during, I believe it was Fighters Rep 12 or 11, David Huey is talking about Raymond Martinez, and they had a conversation in the back, and he says, he is, I believe, like an emergency room nurse or something like that, and he loves it because he could tend to his opponents after like he beats the hell out of them. I mean, I just thought that was so indicative of this guy's personality, and then I also mentioned Michael being the karate all-American kind of uh, appealing to that sort of demographic, the good boy demographic. To be honest, I'm amazed that they can work together, because they're so different personality wise.
Yeah, they work together perfectly. Perfectly. Like you couldn't ask for a better teammate relationship, and they really they understand each other and support each other. And where one has strength, the other they fill in the gaps for each other. And they have very obvious different upbringings, different backgrounds. Uh, so there's different advantages, different challenges, but they support each other incredibly well. And then their individual styles of fighting also fit together, where one is extremely strong, the other might not be quite as experienced or uh, talented there, and they share with each other, and working with the Claycombs, we have now expanded uh, the range in which we are effective. Um, so the Shotokan style of karate is incredibly good at a long range
Yeah.
distance, and they're incredibly good at closing distance and then getting out. And Ire is a little bit more pressure, stand and
Seek
bang,
and destroy.
get inside, seek and destroy. And so, what we are doing is expanding both our skill sets so that we can do whatever we
Right.
want. If we want to crash the distance, shoot in, shoot out. If we want to come in, stay in. If we
Right. 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 Right.
so, and I think the world got a glimpse of that in the last Fighters Rep at the end of Raymond's fight, where a new technique, new to him, right? Not new to the world, but new to his arsenal. He finished the fight with a spinning back kick, um, which we had in our arsenal, but working with Joseph Claycomb, we were able to refine it and get it to a skill level that it can actually be used in a real fight. So and that was the beginning, and we've been working together for years, and we're still working together.
I'll,
So
I'll say. I'll say.
I'm really excited.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry to cut you off there, Coach. I'll say. I'll
No,
say that was that spinning back kick. The way that landed. And I purposely put Ray as the first fight every time he's available, up until this point, right? Because now he's not there anymore because he gets to take the gear off. Just in case you were wondering why I moved him down in the order, he gets to take the gear off. It's the guys that wear the gear that start the fights out. But as long as his gear was on, he was always first if he was available because he's so exciting. But that was such an exclamation point on that fight, and for me, that was just like that was one of the magical, I think, moments, one of the highlights, one of the milestones for me as a promoter. When
and
Go ahead, go ahead.
and his opponent, um, Dwayne Dylan Ludwig,
Tough, tough.
good, good. like I was watching, the video, the footage afterwards, and the things that Dylan was doing, that's not amateur level
Yeah.
skill. That's professional level. He was doubling up shots on both sides. He was shifting his stance. He had good head movement, good boxing, um, good fighter,
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
fighter. So um, yeah, to pull it out like that against a highly skilled, highly competent, tough fighter, just made it that much
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. No, that was beautiful. And again, I mean, I think part of the reason it's so amazing to me is because I was there when Joseph was showing me the tape of Raymond sparring and trying to refine that technique like you're talking about. So obviously, the point we want to get to is and what this video is about is we're definitely excited about Raymond's fight. It's definitely one of the most anticipated fights on the card versus Brandon Anderson. Because Raymond's so exciting, and I hear Brandon Anderson is also very capable and exciting. We haven't had the pleasure to work with him yet, but Mike Sarkeesian, definitely has trained some great fighters, and we're excited for this fight. We're excited
Awesome.
for this fight, and
Yeah.
Raymond's just so exciting, and it's his first time without gear. So I'm really looking forward to this fight and what he's got going on.
Yeah. He's really excited to fight without gear. And there's something wrong with us being fighters. Like, that's what excites you? It's like, yeah, yeah, more pain. Oh, okay.
And then you've also got Michael Claycomb on the card. Like you said, you're now cross-training with the Claycombs. He's taken on
Yeah.
Casamoon Spirits, who's an interesting guy who's also got a background in karate. And he's training over with Peter Cunningham, right? The legendary kickboxing champion, Peter Cunningham. So, I think this is going to be a great fight as well. And we know what Michael Claycomb brings to the table. We know he's highly skilled. You guys are slowly bringing that
Yeah.
dog out of him. You know, and
Yes. Yes. And see, that's where the partnership, sparring with Raymond, who's a bigger, heavier, meaner pressure fighter, is really benefiting uh, Michael. And the ire influence um, is is really helping to accelerate his journey into
yeah,
aggression. So he has more of a tournament background, which is pretty restrictive as far as the amount of contact, uh, what techniques are legal. So, for example, they have a a spinning hook kick that if you use it in the tournament, you are required to hit with the toes and not the heel. The heel's
I
illegal,
see, I see.
but the real technique is with the heel. Uh, so we get to do that now.
Right, right. And he even threw a spinning back kick at the last Fighters Rep, and it did land, but it
Yes,
didn't
yes.
have, it didn't really
Yep.
have the same effect as Raymond's, which landed right on the money and ended up in a knockdown and
Right.
nearly the ending of the fight. So, definitely a fight we're looking forward to. Two great camps. Obviously, you and the Clay
Yep.
Combs. We got Peter Cunningham, a legendary kickboxer on the other side. Two kids with a karate background, and we're very excited about
Yeah.
that fight as well.
Yeah. And uh, our opponent is fit,
Oh
shall
yeah,
we say?
oh yeah. Very fit, very fit. He looks in great shape.
Very, very muscular.
He
Yeah.
looks in
Yeah.
great shape.
So,
Um,
yeah.
what other fights are you looking forward to in this one, Coach Rage? I know you mentioned a couple to me off camera, and people always hear my opinion. They're probably sick and tired of it. What are some that you're kind of excited about as somebody who coaches and comes out and is frequently a part of Fighters Rep?
Yeah. So I forgive me if I mess up anyone's last name or first name or first and last name. Um, out of Cody Sessions' Squirrel Muay Thai, Jason Granado. I'm looking forward to see him fight again. I think it was his
It
debut.
was. It
Last
was.
Fighters
So
Rep.
that's why I'm kind of
Yeah.
surprised you bring him up. But, he was actually in my top 5 or 6 prospect video as well.
Okay. Yeah. Uh, well, one of my, I would say, good friends, Jabril, was cornering the fighter who fought against Jason.
Right.
Um, so, so that fight stood out in my mind. One thing that's kind of, uh, I don't want to say unfair, but one of the things that's a little challenging for me is I don't get to see most of the fights until after the fights,
Right.
and I
Right.
watch them on video
Right.
because I'm in the corner or in the dressing locker rooms. so um, I participate in the event, but I miss a great deal of the event. So putting putting names with faces is a little challenging.
For sure.
Um,
For sure.
but I want to see that kid fight again. I he man he carries himself and presents himself like somebody that's been doing this like a veteran, and he's walking. You know what I'm
I
saying?
said the
Like
same thing in the other video. I said the same thing.
really.
I said this
Uh,
kid looks built for this, is what I said.
there you go. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing him fight.
Yeah.
Um, then
And by the way, I hear the kid he's fighting, Samuel
yeah.
Viramontes, is a really tough kid, a really good kid, training under Coach Raphael out of Systems Training Center. The same guy. You're
Oh,
right. The same guy who's training, Gabe Silva and a lot of these other very tough guys.
ooh,
Raphael the Monster.
I didn't realize that. That's gonna be
It's gonna be a lot of
fun.
fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm glad to have
Yeah.
Systems back. Ever since Dima left and moved away, my contact with Systems has been a little limited, but looks like we're back. We're back in action, and it's gonna be exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta say Systems is a really great school. It's got a great program. Marcus, who owns it, is a really authentic, genuine person,
Yeah,
and I'm happy to see them back at Fighters Rep. So
we got another one that
there
stands
was
out.
there was somebody that I was looking at that it's his first time fighting without gear. Edgar
Zaragoza.
Zaragoza.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Now, something that's he's they're fighting at 142,
yeah.
um, and he's shredded, and he looks bigger than 142, but that's also because of his fight style, the way he fight. He's just like the Terminator. He just forward
Right,
pressure, and
right, right.
for me personally, I like that. So so it sticks out. What can you tell me about the opponent that Edgar has there?
So this is going to
Uh,
be. This is going to
Shot.
be. Oh man. This is going to be such a good fight, Coach Raid.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, man. Hamza, the Syrian Prince, is what he's called, Trad. Training out
Wow.
of Karen Darabidian's MMA gym. Uh, you know, obviously,
And Zaragoza is out of Brood Nine.
he's out of Brood 9, Coach Anthony Eisenhower.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
had both of these kids on before. Hamza actually, the last 2 times he fought for Fighters Rep, I think it was the only 2 times he's fought for us twice. He got finishes in both fights. This kid, yeah,
Ooh.
this kid is explosive. This kid is long. After one of the finishes, he actually ran at the corner, jumped off the corner pad, and did a backflip. I mean, this kid is, this kid's a ninja. His dad trains him.
No kidding.
Yeah, his dad has a ton of striking experience as well, And this is
All right.
this is one to watch. I mean, this is basically what this is for me is explosiveness, right? From Hamza
Mhm.
versus a ridiculous gas tank in Edgar
Yeah.
Zaragoza. And they're both, if anyone is going to move around, it's going to be Hamza, because he's kind of a counter striker. He likes to pick his shots, and he's got a lot of speed. Edgar's coming forward.
Yeah.
This is just an absolutely delicious.
See, now styles make fights.
This is a
Yeah.
delicious style
Yeah.
matchup.
This sounds like a good job. Good job with this
Thank
matchup,
you.
buddy. Like, stylistically, one of them has to fight
Right.
their fight, and the other one has to not fight their fight. Like it can't. One of them's gotta prevail. Um, this is and
It's going to
that's
be a
gonna be fun to
lot of
watch.
fun,
That's
Coach
gonna be fun to
Rage.
watch.
That's going to be a really good one. And that's one you only know. You only know if you've seen them both fight. Luckily, I'm in this position where I get to study these kids and match them up. And this one is 50-50 down the line. This one's crazy.
See, and I like that. I like that. Now, honestly, I like that you do that as a promoter, where you only match good fights where it's very close, and that's so uncommon
Yeah.
in combat sports. You don't play any favoritism.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you.
I,
Thank
I
you for
know
that.
because, well, I know this because if you were to play favoritism for anybody, it would be me. So,
But instead, I'm
no,
putting your guys in there with a bunch of murderers, and and but you guys are doing your thing.
and we
Yeah,
like
you
it.
guys like it, and you guys do your thing. So
um, the is Christian Zoller and Joshua Caldwell.
well, you
Is that
see,
for a title?
it is. It's for the FightersRep Amateur Super Middleweight title, and I love that you segued into that. I mean, we have such a similar. I mean, everyone you're picking, I'm like so excited to watch. So I kind of, I don't know if that's good or bad. I kind of wanted you to give me your opinion, and we have like the same opinion right now. But I love that you're segueing into this fight because it's the same thing. I mean, for me, it's the same thing, right? Zoller is the Zaragoza in this fight, and I feel like Caldwell is the Trot in this fight.
Yeah. Now, I believe that a fighter learns and grows the most from fighting, which sounds on one hand
Jesus
sounds like
Christ,
duh.
I
What are you
could. I
saying?
mean, it's the most obvious and true
But
thing ever.
unless you look at how a lot of people train, and they think obviously training is extremely
Yeah.
important. But as far as like motor skill learning and experience and really coagulating the understanding the essence of fighting, you only get that by fighting. And I bring this up because Christian Zoller, I believe, in his last fight, discovered and learned and had like an aha moment that he can be a pressure fighter.
Right.
And it works for him because he's ridiculously rangy. He has really long legs,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
long arms. And so when you're built like that, your tendency is to keep the range, keep the distance. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that's a great thing. And obviously one
Yeah.
should do that. But if we watch the last round of his last fight, he put the pressure and the volume and I think he's going to bring that into this fight. And the other thing about Zoller, to look at him, he looks tall and skinny. But that night after he won, I kind of smacked him on the shoulder and I said, "Good job, good fight." And that kid
Oh
is
yeah. Oh
solid.
yeah.
Like, what? And this is for a professional, for an amateur title, but that's a
Right.
professional fighter. Not That's like the physiology and the skill set. This is He's turning pro soon. I can tell you because uh, the work that he does and the work that he's doing. Joshua Caldwell, didn't he fight at 185 last
He
time around?
did. He did. He went
Okay.
up. He
Okay.
fought before that. He fought David Rivera. I don't know if you remember at Fighters Rep 12. He fought David Rivera in what was a great fight at 170. Yeah,
No kidding.
and I said,
No
listen, I
kidding.
got a great fight for you at 185, and that's the fight we made against Cameron Spencer in the last fight.
Wow. Okay. Now, see, you gotta. I didn't. I that to me that commends respect, right? So in the fight game, well, I know you know this because you work as a promoter, but it's hard enough to get guys to fight in their weight classes against
Right,
close
right,
fights.
right.
But to step up a weight class against somebody like Cam, that it takes courage and that takes faith in one's ability. And he
It
did
does,
really
and
well
you
in
know,
that fight.
it took courage
Josh
and
did.
faith in Cam's ability as well, because remember he was a 205er or a 200 pounder, and he dropped down to 185. So
Nice,
I thought it was
nice.
such a good fight that I wanted, I was able to convince Cam to go down to 185 and Joshua to move up to from 170 to 185. It turned out to be a great fight, and I couldn't have done it, without Coach Hung at Hardworks, whose guys are willing to
Yes.
fight anybody, who's willing to fight anybody. And I want to drive this point home, right? Because Coach Rage, you mentioned me making these 50-50 fights that a lot of these others won't make, and it's because I deal with camps that I know are willing to challenge themselves to create the aha moments like Christian
Yeah.
Zoller had in that fight. Shout out as well to his coach, Lamance McCurry, Vital Force MMA, who
Yeah.
also have balls. I'm just going to call it balls for lack of a
Oh
better
yeah.
term. So
Oh yeah.
not only did Hung have the courage to do it and is always down to fight whoever doesn't care because he has faith in his ability, like you said. Coach Jason Caldwell, who's the brother of Joshua Caldwell and his coach, also had the faith in his brother's ability and his coaching. Shout out to Blackbeard Boxing to allow
Yeah.
me to make that
And
fight.
Jason is he is quite the extrovert.
I think you're being
he was he was almost as fun to watch as the fight.
for real. What do you mean by that? I didn't even notice that.
Oh really? Just big
Joshua or
personality.
Jason, the
Uh,
fighter or the coach?
Jason, the
I
coach,
see,
the
I
brother.
see, I see.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just a lot of fun, a lot of personality, a lot of charisma. Um, and that's something that I think is pretty important is to understand, like, as coaches, absolutely, we are there to support the fighter, but we're also part of the show. We're also there to get the crowd excited and sell tickets
That's
and
definitely something.
make the
I
event
want to say that's
successful.
something that you definitely make a point in doing before every fight. And I'll say one of the most hilarious moments at Fighters Rep for me, right, was I think it was at It was at Fighters Rep 12. It was when Lewis was being announced, and you did this war cry, right? And even Joshua Shibata, our announcer, big shout out to him, broke character and started laughing. And then continued with announcing, Lewis, I mean, you did this war cry that, I was kind of afraid, but I was also laughing at the same time. So, yeah, big shout out to Coach Jason. One cool thing that Jason did in that fight that I just wanted to mention real quick is, so afterwards, a lot of the Hard Works people were there. They were booing. They didn't like the decision. And he actually took a beer over to one of the guys that was booing a lot. So I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, 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 and yeah, it's we are here to test ourselves. We're here to grow as
Right.
professional athletes, professional fighters. But first and foremost, we are here for the fans, right? And we need to keep things in perspective. If the fans are booing, they paid, they bought the ticket, and that's their right.
Now, one thing you
So
mentioned was for this fight, and I just want to touch on it a bit more because it is for the FightersRep super middleweight amateur title, and it is the main event for the amateur portion of the card.
okay,
Is you
yep.
mentioned Christian Zoller's physiology and his physique. What about Joshua Caldwell? I mean, they're kind of the same
Yeah,
guy. They're kind of the same guy a little bit.
they are very similar. They're extremely tall, and I mean, they're over 6 feet, well over 6 feet, and they're fighting at 170. I mean, I know Christian's 6'3". Caldwell's got to be 6'3",
Yeah.
6'4", and for 170 pounds. Now, a lot of my weight class eyeball is
Yeah.
from MMA, and MMA tends to be a little stockier and more muscular. But man, those are tall guys for 185, and they're down here fighting at 170, and they are super
Yeah.
fit, athletic, shredded, dense, um, and I really like Caldwell's
Yeah.
kicks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
He's got a good
yeah,
style. He's got a good style too.
yeah, yeah, and like you said, it's only one, it's very comparable to the fight that we talked about before. Only one person is going to be able to
Right.
fight their fight, and whoever first comes out and establishes this is what we're doing, that they're probably going to get the win.
I love this fight so
Um,
much, Rage.
yeah,
Zoller, I feel like, again, like you said, it's just like the other fight. Zoller's the volume guy. Zoller's the pressure guy. And Caldwell is the counter puncher. He's the counter striker. He's the sharp kind of maybe more speedy, more
yep,
powerful guy, but Zoller's the one that's coming for you, and is trying to take you out with his
yeah.
accumulation of punches.
And the thing that is so exciting about amateurs, what we last saw is no
Oh,
indication of what we're going to get, because amateurs grow at such a fast rate, and they implement new things, or they had things that they didn't get to express in the last fight that we're going to see in this fight. Um, so we know this is going to be a great fight. We just don't know. I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised at new skills, new attitudes, and new tactics. That
and
it's
you know
going to be
what, Coach
exciting to
Rage?
see.
I feel like you're absolutely right, and I feel like that point is amplified by the fact that I am lucky enough to deal with camps who see the vision and who are down to fight whoever. That's what it's about. I'm
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
asking people to
Uh,
fight, somebody that I believe is. I'm never asking people to fight somebody that I believe is too much for them. I'm never going to do that.
yeah,
I'm always going to put guys in a fight that I think they can win, but they can also lose. It's going to be as close to 50-50 as possible. And I think when guys are taking fights like that over and over again, they are getting better at an exponential rate.
exactly. exactly. And it's it's almost like a secret formula because it's so uncommon
Which
uh,
is sad. Which is sad.
to well,
I don't want to toot
okay,
my horn, but I
yes.
just will say it's a little bit sad, some of the matchups that I see. So
Well, I say you can toot your own horn. That's cool. You say you're lucky enough to work with these camps. I say you've done the work to find these camps,
appreciate that. Appreciate
right?
that.
Uh, and you are carving out a niche in in the combat sports area, and the brand of Fighters Rep is becoming known for exactly this, for exactly hard fights, good fights, knockouts at the amateur level. Really? Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you can't tell the difference between an amateur fight and a pro fight.
And that is exactly what we're going for. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel below, smash that like button, comment, share, hit the bell notification icon to know when we put out a video. Follow us on Instagram and definitely follow Coach Rage at his Instagram handle right there under his picture at the Rage NG. And be sure to get your tickets to Fighters Rep 14 on June 25th at FightersRep.com. Or you can join the channel at FightersRep.com. You can catch the live stream if you can't make it to the event, which you have no excuse because Coach Rage is at the Commerce Casino. And they can just spend the night at the hotel and watch a fantastic night of fights. I just needed to throw that in there before we move on to the next fight.
And it's also a phenomenal date. Go to the fights, the casino, the hotel, the whole weekend.
Much
It's a great date.
appreciated. Much
So,
appreciated, Coach Rage. I would agree.
I'm speaking from feedback I got from friends that were at the last
Who
show, and probably going to be at
who
the
are
show.
connoisseurs of violence, according to your post-fight interview.
I mean, yes, that kind of sounds like a joke, but it isn't. These are my friends that have been with me for decades, and we've been to many different professional boxing, amateur boxing, professional MMA, amateur MMA, kickboxing, all kinds of jiu-jitsu, catch wrestling. This is an educated fan, educated people that literally said this is the best promotion that they've seen. Pro Am. They couldn't believe the talent and the caliber of all the fights. And a lot of times amateurs are painful to watch, where that doesn't happen at Fighters Rep. From beginning to end, every fight is good, and the main events, man, I'm excited to see where this goes. We are building pros and bringing in pros, and I think the sport of kickboxing is growing because of the work that you are doing for Fighters
That
Rep.
means everything, man. Thank you for that, Rage. I mean, that means a lot. I am putting in a lot of hard work, and to hear something like that from a coach I respect is it means a lot to me. And you mentioned bringing in pros. Let's talk about some of these pro fights on this card, Coach Rage, because we got some doozies on here, man. Connor Bracken's back. Ed Hyman's back. David Pacheco's back. Justin Moss is back. These are all guys that have fought for us before.
Ooh. So Ed Hyman, um, I like how he moves. I like his kicks, and I like that he incorporates uh, good boxing, actual real boxing, uh, with the kicks in combination. So and his opponent, I'm unfamiliar with.
His opponent,
Um,
Alfredo Borrego, he's actually a coach right now as well. Coach Rage, yeah, and he's
Really?
had a couple pro MMA fights, but he was one of these strikers. He was one of these people, right, that I'm looking to cater to at Fighters Rep. A guy who was more of a natural striker and got kind of, you know, pigeonholed rather into MMA because he couldn't really find any good striking promotions to compete at. And he's more of
Right?
a boxing, kickboxing base, but he's had a couple MMA fights. He's actually used to train at Hard Works a little bit at Sub Fighter with Tracy Hess.
Oh,
Right, he's now living in Minnesota. He moved out to Vegas and then went out to Minnesota, so he's actually flying in from Minnesota. But he's a native, right? But
no
he's a
kidding.
native. He's a native of Long
No
Beach, and
kidding.
it's a fight I'm very excited about. Two big boys at 195 pounds
Wow.
throwing down, Coach Rate.
That's yeah, 195 too. That's 195 and in professional kickboxing,
That's a lot of action.
speed, power, pain. It's yeah,
And I'm
that's
excited.
gonna be
And I'm
exciting.
excited to see how Ed
Um,
Hyman bounces back. I mean, as we saw in the last fight, he got stopped by Connor Bracken. I felt like he didn't really have a chance to get off. The fight ended in 22 seconds. Unfortunately, that's what happens when you fight at these weight classes. He fought Connor at 185 pounds, so they were cutting down from at least 200, something like that.
mm,
And
mm,
one shot can spell the end at that weight class at fighters
yeah,
at fighters rep. So
yeah, especially
I'm excited to see how he comes back
yeah,
from it.
especially yeah. Well, and I mean, one shot from
Right.
Bracken, Bracken be cracking. Um, I I mean, Connor Bracken. The thing is, now I was a fan of Connor Bracken before it was cool to be a fan of Connor Bracken.
I love it.
I will
I
tell you
love
this.
it.
And Connor trains under Joxanon
Right.
Fairtex,
Who, big
who
shout out to him, is the reason, let me just interject real quick, is the reason everybody that fights at Fighters Rep wears Fairtex gloves. He's the one that helped me get that sponsorship. Continue.
and we love we
Thank you.
love those
Thank you.
gloves. Yeah. I'm gonna tell a little
Yes,
story
of
if
course.
that's okay. I the Wooden Man got his name, the Wooden Man, uh, because he's so tough. The way he fights, uh, it might be classified as, or the way he fought, I should say. He's from the golden era of Muay Thai. He's a
Yeah.
Muay Thai legend. Um, and for those watching, type in Google, YouTube, Jock Sinan Fairtex, or maybe even type in the Wooden Man and search Elbow War.
I'm doing it right after
He is.
this. Right after this, I'm doing it.
If stand and bang is a style, stand and bang with elbows is what
Wow.
really made Joxanon famous. Um, I was so frustrated uh, a few fighters reps ago. I don't. Time gets really
Yeah.
blurry to me, but the first time that Joxanon brought fighters to fighters rep, I fanboyed. I ran right up. I took a selfie with him.
I remember
Um,
that. I remember that.
Joxanon, yeah, yeah, and I was like, it's okay, it's Wooden, and nope, so few people knew who he was. I was offended. I like it would be like not knowing who Mike
Right. Right.
Tyson is or not knowing who Manny
Right. Right.
Pacquiao is if you are at a boxing event and um so Joxanon, I learned about Joxanon in probably 2003 or 2004. Uh, I was friends with Alex Gong, who owned the Fairtex gyms in Northern California. And I was working for a company called Eastern Athletics, and we were working with Alex to open Fairtex Tribeca. And so that's when Joxanon and Ganyao and the Fairtex fighters came on my radar. And it was 20 something years later at FightersRep that I
That's
finally got
awesome,
to
man.
meet him. Yeah, yeah. So we're actually talking about Conor
Right,
Bracken.
right, right, right.
What can you tell me about
Jeffrey
Jeffrey Anderson?
Anderson, you know, he looks the part of a very good challenge. He looks the part of a very stiff challenge. He's tall. He's 6'3", and again, this is another mover, sharp counter striker, taking on a aggressive, you know, guy who apparently has knockout power now, one hitter quitter knockout power in Conor Bracken, and it's my understanding that Jeffrey's laid people out too. So I'm very excited about this fight. Again, 185 pounds. Both guys over 6 feet. I believe Jeffrey's like 6'3". Definitely a mover. Definitely good with his feet.
Yeah.
Says, George, you got to let me dance. I want to dance, is what he says. But he says, I want to
All
dance,
right.
but there will be blood. There will be blood. And so I'm excited about this clash of styles.
Where's he?
Jeffrey's out of
Where's he out
Tucson,
of?
Arizona. He's got a great coach. You know, I guess I'm not sure. You know, I don't think MTK is really around anymore, but it's like an MTK affiliate gym in Tucson. I know they had
Oh,
some
okay.
issues with some some shady stuff going on overseas with MTK and people trying to mess with that. But you know, they're very. It's a very good striking gym. He's got very good boxing. His coach is, his coach Brad is the guy who invented the Versa mitts that Daniel Jacobs and Tank Davis are using. These guys really know what they're doing, and it's such an interesting thing. You know, he's got kickboxing experience on the pro level. He's also got MMA experience, and it's so interesting, right, to have this almost like a very boxing heavy kickboxer take on Conor Bracken, who's coming out of Junction on Woodenman, Fair Texas gym. I mean, it's just, and again, the clash of styles, the clash of camps. I can't wait for this fight. And
Yeah.
every fight Conor's in is madness, and I just can't wait to see how he mixes up with Jeffrey.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Conor
Yeah.
says he wants to. We just did an interview with Conor. He said he wants to take his head off, and he enjoys hurting people. So I feel like Conor's right up your alley.
Are you sure he doesn't train with me?
So it's gonna be
Yeah.
exciting. Jeffrey looks good. Conor we know is good, and Jeffrey looks good, and I know he's good too, and I look forward to it.
Yeah. I kind of feel like Connor he is becoming kind of a breakout star of Fighters Rep. He's kind of becoming and all he does is what he does. He's not looking for the glory. He's not Instagramming it. No, it's just he shows up, chaos ensues, violence breaks out, uh, and that's what we're here
It
for.
is, and it's so funny, right? I mean, because he embodies a couple things we talked about. He's the personification of my philosophy on this whole thing. Put 50-50 fights together, and these guys will create themselves. We don't have to manufacture or cater or set anyone up. Cater to or set
Yeah.
anyone up. Conor has been in 3 fights at Fighters Rep, right? He was 1-0 before he came to us. He's had 3 fights with us. The first one, it was a draw with Eddie Jackson. I mean, it doesn't get closer than that. The second
Right.
one was a great fight where he improved because of what me and you talked about earlier, the activity, essentially, right?
Yeah. Well,
The second one, he improved. He got a decision win over Tyler Smith, who's very tough, at a classic fight team, a guy I'm also trying to bring back. And then in the third fight, in a matter of 6 months or 8 months that he took these 3 fights in, he gets a knockout over Ed Hyman in 22 seconds.
Right.
And again, like you said, there's no replacement. And this is something that I swear, it's just, I swear to God, it's driving me crazy, right? With some of these fighters, with some of these camps. I tell them the value of activity, of in-ring activity, is just irreplaceable. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get it.
Well, and there's documented research on motor skill learning, on physiology, on myelination of nerves. It's well documented. Yeah. So it's, and like some people will say that ring rust isn't a thing. It definitely is.
I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Oh yeah. And this, we're talking about the opposite of ring rust, whatever that would, it doesn't have a name, but
ring lubrication. I don't know what they call it. We'll come up with something, I'm sure.
We'll come up with something. Absolutely. So Darren Smith and David Pachenko.
Oh my goodness.
And see, David Pachenko is another one of those guys that just looks enormous.
Yeah.
This fight is at 165, 166. And David Pachenko, to me, looks like he's just a shredded, ripped 200-pounder. He isn't, but that's what he looks like
a Conan the Barbarian character. That's what David Pachenko
looks
like. He's a monster.
Yes, he
does.
He
played football.
And he fights like one too, right. Honestly. I mean, what did he break his foot or something in the last fight? I just remember, I don't know if he actually was injured, but I just remember bruises everywhere, and I remember him spending a long time with the doctor after the fight. But
he's a special type. I mean, it's just, I don't think everybody's built like this guy, and he may have fractured his foot in that fight. He may have fractured it. And that was an incredible fight, by the way. We're talking about David Pachenko versus Diego Perez. Before that, when he fought Andrew Wynn, was just another absolutely bonkers fight. Every fight Pacheco's in, it's just, my heart's coming out of my chest. And, I feel like we're going to get the same thing with a guy in Darren Smith who I've been told by people that have trained with him and sparred him that it feels like being hit with wet bricks is what I'm told.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I know Darren pretty well. I know a few different coaches that he's trained with. Wet bricks. That's what it feels like.
Wet bricks versus a guy who has the durability of, the Grim Reaper, essentially.
Yeah, but also a little bit of the Tasmanian Devil.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't see how anybody can be, honestly, can be a fan of fighting and not watch this and not want to watch this fight. I mean, this fight by itself for me, I know I'm going to lose 5 years off my life screaming ringside.
Well, these 3 fights, the pro fights that we just talked about, Ed Hyman and the guy from Minnesota that's also from Long Beach, that is going to be a war. That both those guys have something to prove. Both of them have something to prove, and they're coming to prove it. So that's going to be exciting. Connor Bracken and Jeffrey, come on. We don't need to talk about that more. That's going to be awesome. And now Darren Smith and David Pachenko. So boom, boom, boom.
Right.
Are you kidding me? That's
and
awesome.
that's immediately after Christian Zoller takes on Joshua Caldwell. Zaragoza takes on Trod. We didn't mention Yadir Perez versus Isaac Henriquez, who Yadir Perez, I think, has an 8-second knockout in his FightersRep history.
Really?
Yeah, he has the
Really?
quickest knockout in Fighters Rep history. He just comes out and guns blaze, and whatever happens, happens.
Wow. And he's at
At
127,
127, and he's fighting a guy,
and he gets knocked
right? And
out.
he's fighting a guy in Isaac Henriquez, who's also 127, obviously, but trained by Jason Childers. And I'm not sure if you remember, but Gustavo Flores, who was, I think, 123 or 127 at the last Fighters Rep, also trains with Jason Childers and
Right.
finished that fight in 1 round.
Yeah.
Now that
Yeah.
Yadir Henriquez fight is obviously immediately preceded by Brandon Anderson versus your guy Raymond Martinez, and really I don't know if you're a fight fan if you don't come watch this, And then finally, the cherry on top. I mean, look, there's other fights we could talk about, but I've kept you on for almost an hour now, Coach Rage, and I don't want to get beat up
Wow.
by your significant others. But there's Luis Francis Shinelli taking on Justin Moss, the Fighters Rep super middleweight champ who's defending his belt. We're bringing him in from Colorado. He's, again, the Fighters Rep super middleweight champion. He's the Iron Man. The guy trains at altitude. The guy is made out of iron. Taking on a 6'5" Luis Francis Shinelli from Brazil with significant kickboxing experience. A guy you're familiar with.
Oh, yeah. So we call him the Brazilian Louis. We being the IR division, we already have a Louis on our team, his Toro, El Toro. Right. But the Brazilian Louis is 90% leg. I think he's 6'5", 6'7", and he might be taller than that. He's 170 pounds, but at Black House we put him in to spar with Drago, with Alexander Volkov, who is 6'11", just because they were similar.
Right.
Not size, obviously. Volkov's 260, so he's almost 100 pounds heavier than Lewis. But the height and reach was comparable enough that he was a good sparring partner for Alexander Volkov.
I love it.
Right? And my fighters have sparred with him, have worked with him back when he was training out of Black House, and we were training out of Black House. And we couldn't get inside. We couldn't get clear of his kicks, and he was just pwah, pwah, pwah. And now I see that he's training with Brian Popejoy.
Oh yeah,
Brian Popejoy.
He's a legend around these parts.
I was trying to be.
He's a legend around these parts. Yeah.
Man, this Brian Popejoy, the work that he has done over the past 5-7 years, and he's champion after champion after champion in Muay Thai overseas in Singapore. Just pa-pam, 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 pa-pam. So Brazilian Louis training with Brian Popejoy makes total sense to fight for the super middleweight title against Justin Moss, who's a Glory vet. He won the title. I don't remember which Fighters Rep it was.
Rep 10.
But that was a war. I remember a lot of blood. I remember cuts and wounds and
Right.
Yeah. So this is that's going to be exciting to watch.
That's a 5-rounder.
And both these guys kick and punch well above their weight. I mean, it says 170 pounds, but man, it could be 205.
Oh, yeah.
These guys kick hard, punch hard. Oh man, we got knees from. I mean, with Louis' legs, man, he can stand 3 blocks over in the other neighborhood and still be close enough to throw a knee.
I love it. So yeah, I mean, if you guys haven't already, please get your tickets to Fighters Rep 14 at FightersRep.com or get your live stream also at FightersRep.com. You could also get it in the description to this video just below me and Rage's mugs on this screen. Couple things, Coach Rage, before I let you go, because we have been on here an hour. A couple fights I wanted to touch on very briefly and talk about. I think, you know how I like to do. I like to set the night off right. Melvin Guerra versus Shanchai Chomson sub. This is Marcos Bonilla's fighter, and Melvin Guerra, who doesn't know, was never taught how to take a step back. The poor kid. And he's just going to fight you. He doesn't care who you are, and he's super exciting. He's taking on Shanchai Chomson sub, who, even though he hasn't fought for us before, he's coached by Jason Caldwell, and something tells me that fight is going to be an absolute banger. In the second fight, we've got Albert Tadeo and Brandon Washington. I'm going to leave it at this. Both of these guys got a chip on their shoulder. Both of these guys got something to prove. So I definitely can't wait for that fight. Another one I wanted to touch on briefly is David Marquez versus Ralph Sanchez. David Marquez in his last Fighters Rep bout, man, was moving around like some sort of, I don't know, like a baby Lomachenko or something. I can't wait to watch him fight Ralph Sanchez, who's one of Hung's guys. So it's Coach Pot versus Hung. And both of these guys.
And then did we get to watch the coaches fight
I wish. That would be a lot of action.
Yeah. I see, again, from my perspective, I kind of know the fighters. Like, it's hard to keep track of all the names, but there's certain coaches, Pot and Hung, like, man, So I get excited because I know the work of the coaches. I don't necessarily know who they're bringing to the table, but I know because they're bringing it, it's going to be just knowing. Listen, if they're out of hard works, we know
they work hard, and same with BPMMA, Coach Pot. We know we're getting something special. Those guys come to fight, and I think that fight's going to be really, really good, really, really good. And then finally, Coach Rage, I just want to real quickly plug the amateur heavyweight bout: George Aquino versus Kevin Ross. George Aquino out of Lamont McCurry's gym. Again, the same guy training Christian Zoller. He's telling me, he's got this kid ready, is what he tells me. And I should expect something special. And he's taking on Milton Arguello's very own Kevin Light Skin Daddy Ross, who's 2-0 at Fighters Rep and has got enough charisma for all of us. So I can't wait to watch that one.
Nice. Yeah. See, what the thing that sucks about combat sports is that somebody has to lose. But man, like, there's not a fight on here there's not a single fight that we talked about, that we've been talking about for over an hour now, that you have no reaction to, right? It's like, oh, really? Cool. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And then I just want to shout out my boy Lion.
He's on the card as well. We're very excited to have him back too.
Yeah.
And he's taking on a kid in Ryan Grijalva out of Manny Mancha's gym. Manny Mancha's kickboxing gym. So, I love the fact, There
you go.
I love the fact that there's actually a gym dedicated to just kickboxing in Manny Mancha's gym up in Fresno. And Lion, he looked good in his last fight at Fighters Rep. He's coached by Jason Park. I know you have some affiliation there with them. You've worked with them in the past. I really enjoyed working with Coach Jason. I appreciate you, Coach Rage, because you kind of put the word in for me and him to get to know each other, and that was a good connection to make, and I appreciate you helping us, grow this community.
He's got some good talent.
For sure. So these fights are going to be crazy. Subscribe, join the channel if you want to support us. Get your Fighters Rep merch in the link below. Follow Coach Rage at the Rage NG right there on Instagram and see what he's got going on. And join us on June 25th. Coach Rage, is there anything you want to say, anyone you want to shout out, anyone you want to thank before I let you go?
I want to thank you, George. Seriously. I've been in the fight game, a long time. I've worked with a lot of different promoters. Uh, the work that you're doing is so important, and you are building a community where you can get an honest environment to grow in the sport of kickboxing in America, and real kickboxing, full contact, unified rules kickboxing. And I couldn't be happier than to be here working with you and
And
fighting
I
for you.
really appreciate it. I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to all the coaches, that have decided to, again, venture into Fighters Rep, because, you're not going to get an easy fight, basically. And,
Mm-mm,
I appreciate
mm-mm.
you guys understanding that winning doesn't mean shit if you're winning against tomato
Right.
cans. That the whole boxing formula, which, I'm a huge fan of boxing.
Oh my God! Can we
Yeah,
talk about that
we
for one
can. We
second?
can. We can.
It's it's gotten to like it was bad. It was bad 5 years ago when they were manufacturing champions and they were protecting the O of the champion and they were lining up. They are now manufacturing
Right.
tomato cans with unblemished records.
Right. No, no, they can do that because I've literally,
Oh
I've been
my
involved
God!
in this long enough to where I've literally seen people, right? They'll fly their fighter, Coach Rage, to other countries to beat on the native population in an area where they don't box and they have absolutely no chance of winning. They'll get them to
That's
10
right.
and 0, 15 and 0, and then they'll sell them to some promoter in the United States that will continue, or anywhere else that will
Exactly.
continue that
And
trajectory.
and part of that process, they will actually that fighter will pay the other
Exactly.
fighter, will pay the promoter and the other fighter to put the victim
The
on the card
victim.
with them.
That's what they are. They are. It's almost like a mercenary that you hire to beat up, though. It's like a mercenary in reverse. It's a paid victim. Is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. And there are so many places where the exchange rate on the dollar or the exchange rate on the euro is so disfavorable that what we don't consider to be a lot of money is life-changing
Right.
money for them. And, we get knocked out sometimes in
Right.
training. You think they're not going to take that
Oh
if it
yeah. Oh
feeds their
yeah.
family, Anyway, super frustrating, super frustrating. And I work in professional boxing. I'm a fan of this of boxing, but boxing has
Yeah.
betrayed
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. And I still watch it and I still love it, but it's 100%, and that's why I'm trying to build a culture that's the antithesis to that. I'm trying to build a culture.
in a sport that's relatively young, and we're starting out
Right.
doing it
Right.
right,
Well.
doing it right. And
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say the sport
I
isn't young though, Coach Rage. It's just they let it languish. They neglected it. They let it die. I'm trying to. It's almost like I'm resuscitating this sport. It is young
right,
compared to boxing, maybe.
right. Well, and it's
Yeah.
young. The unified rules, the legit boxing technique within the kickboxing format, that's pretty new. Um, and the different renditions of what kickboxing was, it's almost a completely different sport if we look at what it used to be, in the 80s with
The long
you
pants.
know. So, yeah, well, with the mandatory kick count,
Oh, that's
like
horrible. I think
I,
that's
I
horrible.
think it was because yeah, so it was like you got to get 8 kicks around. And so they would
Right. Right.
go out and they'd throw the bing, 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 and then they would just
Right. Right.
box without
Right.
knowing how to box. Um, yeah. So the what kickboxing is now, and the unified rules, and really it's here to stay. It's here to grow. We can debate whether it's a young
Right.
sport or an old sport or an eternal sport. What it is now, I think we got the right formula. We definitely have the right access to with the internet. We have a global reach, uh, and with Fighters Rep, we're putting together great fights. So
Appreciate you.
yeah, it's exciting to be here. Um, and like I said, I work professionally in boxing. I work professionally in MMA. But the potential here at Fighters Rep, I'm the
I
most excited
really
about.
appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I'm glad you see the vision the way I see it, Coach Rage. And you know what else gets me excited? I know you're heavily involved in boxing. I feel
Mm,
like our rule set, you know, not just our rule set, but the culture here that we have, right? Southern California,
yeah,
especially California, it's just so boxing influenced. And I just feel like our kickboxers, if we continue to do this, like these are going to be the most dangerous, if not already, the most dangerous strikers on the planet, man, because I feel like a lot of the striking community, traditionally kind of lacks the hands that I think are necessary to be considered a
hmm
great boxer. But when you have all
yep,
these boxing gyms down here and you have so many great boxing coaches that are teaching at these gyms, these MMA gyms or these Muay Thai gyms or whatever gyms that we have signing on to fight for us. It's just such
yeah,
a technically sound boxing influence that's coming in to Fighters Rep, and
yeah,
I'm my mouth is just watering thinking about it. You know what I mean? Because I'm such a boxing fan.
yeah. And it is a SoCal phenomenon. Um, the the MMA, Muay Thai, martial art communities have really went and sought out and started working with um, some of the best boxing coaches and boxing trainers. Los Angeles was a hub for boxing, and and then these great coaches open gyms and travel and so there's something really special
Yeah.
going on, like you said. Uh, and what happens, you don't really know. You don't really know until you get lit up. So you think you know. You think you know something about ground fighting, and then you walk into and you get submitted by a black belt, and then you're like, oh, I don't know any. I wrestled a little bit in high school, but I actually don't know
Right. Right.
anything. Same thing, that's the same humbling experience when you try and box with a real boxer. Um, and that's not to downplay or disregard any kicking arts. Like boxers won't even, if you
Right.
kick, they
Right.
leave.
Right.
They're like, you're not going to kick
Right.
me. I'll just walk
right.
out the
Right.
ring. So it's not disregarding. I love kicking. I
Yeah.
myself was a kicker, uh, but yeah, like there, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's a global sport. Of course, they're going to have that's what they do. They
Yeah. Yeah.
punch, they hit, and they'll get hit, and they're going to be the best at it. And they're branching out and sharing, and there's a whole lot of community, cross community hybridization, a lot of great things happening. And again, I know I sound like my grandfather, but the internet has made the world is tiny.
Right.
We're interconnected and we're easily accessible. And you can find someone on Instagram that you've never met that's on the other side of the planet and send them a
Yeah.
message. You couldn't do that. You couldn't do
Right.
that
Right.
10 years ago.
You can send them a whole
Crazy,
tutorial on how to throw a punch properly.
right? Yeah.
And I wanted to say one more thing, since we're on the topic of boxing. I was told by a coach recently that, they think it's popular because it's easy to understand. Any casual or hardcore fight fan can understand boxing. It's just two people punching each other. I believe at Fighters Rep, we're also easy to understand. It's guys throwing punches, kicks, and knees. And just like in boxing, if you clinch, they're going to break you up. The difference is...
We break the clinch a little faster than boxing.
The difference
Yeah, we do.
is you can get hit with a shin, you can get hit with a knee. It's the danger can come from even more angles. So I think that's what makes us a bit different and entertaining.
And super exciting, and it's appealing. Like you said, to people that don't know anything. Yeah, you can tell what's going on. Spinning back kick, spinning back fist, knee, flying knee. Those are exciting.
For sure.
And then right on up to the connoisseur who actually understands all the techniques and understands the tactics and the strategy. And yeah, it's a great sport.
Awesome. Coach Rage, what an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I look forward to doing it again sometime soon, and I cannot wait for June 25th when we get to watch all these fights, and I get to see you in the corner doing your thing and being an evil genius in that corner again.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Again, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, share, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, Coach Rage.